All right, little exercise for us today. We're going to be working on composition primarily, so putting things on a page to draw the reader's eye, the user's eye, to grab their attention, to add meaning to an image, okay, but still working with really basic shapes and texts and really just focusing on how to put things on the page, how to think about contrast, negative space, some of these things. So what I've got is 8 little posters created. Each one has an image. You'll notice that this Illustrator file has 4 layers: instructions, which is locked, images, which is locked, and then text and shapes, which are for you to put text and shapes on. And as you read the instructions, I've said pick 1 or 2 of these to work on. And you're going to add 1 or 2 words to each poster to create something interesting. I want you thinking about the relationship between the words and the image, and creating something that is pleasing or beautiful or interesting or strange. We're just playing today again. All right, so I'm going to do this one first. And this is really low contrast. It's really murky. I can't even tell. It's like a landscape or an ocean. So I thought that some fun words to put on this would be get lost. So I have my text tool, and let me do that again so you can see it. My type tool is right here. Okay, I can also get it by hitting T, and I'm going to draw a text box. In Illustrator, we draw a text box, we type inside it. So I'm going to type get, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to type lost because I want those words to be on different lines. Now, I'm going to select my text, and the 2 panels that we're going to be using here are my character panel and my paragraph panel. My character panel is where I choose my font and my font size and some other things that we'll talk about. And my paragraph panel is where I'm going to do my alignment for now. Here, because I'm just going to have these words kind of floating by themselves, I want them centered. On a poster that works pretty well. And then I'm going to come to my character panel and I'm going to think about a couple things. So first I'm going to change the font. And I have this idea. I want to use kind of an unexpected font here. And I'm going to use this font called Sabbath that I have. And this is a black letter font, so it's kind of that old style of font that you see on like heavy metal posters and things. And you'll notice here it's too big right now, so I'm going to go here to my font size, and I'm clicking here, and the way that I like to do it is just to use the arrow to go down, and if I hold shift, it will kind of go down by more at a time. And I'm going to come, I like about there. And then the other thing that we'll be playing with today is the line height. So that controls the space between lines of text. And I want it to be just a little bit bigger. So for a title like this, that's fine. I like how that looks. Okay, so I can click here and you see it has kind of a strange effect, but it doesn't really look that out of place. It's nice. As you move it around, you'll have probably noticed, that Illustrator gives you lots of clues about what's going on in relation to the alignment. So that pink line there is telling me that it's centered with the image. That's what I want. And I'm going to leave it there for now. The other thing I want to do is I want to change the color here because it's really contrasty and I kind of want to stay with that low contrast look. And I also want to keep playing with like making this look a little bit strange. So I'm going to make it neon green and hit OK. So now it looks strange, but it's still more contrasty than I want. I want less contrast there. So I'm going to introduce another panel. This is the transparency panel. Okay, it's right here. And if your setup doesn't look like my setup, remember to go to your workspaces and go to the typography workspace. That's what one we're using right now. So I'm going to come to my transparency panel, and one thing that I can do here is change the opacity. And the opacity is just how visible is this? How much is it blending into the background? So I can go all the way to the 0 and it's gone. I can say it's 10% visible. And I can play with this till I get it where I like it. And I actually like it about there. Again, it's low contrast. It's not jumping out at you. It's a little bit hard to see. And for whatever reason, I think that that's fun and interesting for this one. Now, the other thing that I want to do, and I've just realized I've been on my shapes layer. So I could either Apple X, come to my text layer, and Apple V to paste this in. I could also just take this little green rectangle, this square here, which is whatever I have selected, and I can drag it between layers. So it's on the shapes layer, and now it's on the text layer. All right, so I do want to do something on my shapes layer though. And what I want to do is draw a couple lines. The line tool is right under rectangle and ellipse. Okay, I can also get it by hitting the slash. And what I'm thinking about is I would like the reader's eye to still be drawn down to this dark area. So I'd kind of like this movement from upper left to lower right, and I'm going to emphasize that with a couple lines. So I'm just going to click and drag and draw a line here, and I'm going to make that line. So again, everything has a fill color and a stroke color, and lines have a stroke color. So I'm going to make that one neon green, and then I'm going to put another one that just kind of crosses here. And I'm going to, again, I'm just hitting V to get my selection. I'm grabbing one of my points of my line, and I'm going to do something like that. Click off and kind of see how I feel about it. So I like that. I might continue to play with it, but it's roughly doing what I want it to do. It's bringing my eye down. It kind of says map to me, which I like. You know, this has something kind of landscapey about it. And I think I'm also going to bring the opacity of these lines down just a little bit because they're standing out a little bit more than I want them to. So I'm going to bring them down, and I think I like that. I could play with it, you know, forever, but for now we're going to call that done, and we're going to move on. So the next one that I want to work on is this one. And as I was working with this one earlier, I'm going to come back to my text layer and get my text tool, my type tool, and draw myself a type box. And when I was playing with this one earlier, what I decided that I really liked is just putting the word lost on it. And you'll see different fonts will kind of have a different flavor depending on what image they're with, right? This font looks really different against the Statue of Liberty and against this grayscale image. But for this one thing that I wanted to do is I want to use just a really simple font. So I'm going to come to my character panel, and I'm going to get Helvetica Bold, which is just a super simple sans serif font that you've probably seen a lot. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to start thinking about where I want to put it on the image. So, you know, I want you thinking about the relationship between the text and what's behind it. So you'll notice if I put this black text on something that's darker and more detailed, it reads very differently than if I just put it right in the middle, say, or even up here. You can think about the shape of the letters in relationship to the image. So maybe you want to do something like use that O to frame something, okay? Maybe like that, maybe you don't. What I found when I was playing earlier is I like to put the curve of that O over her face. I think that kind of does something really interesting with the image. It's interesting to look at because it obscures something that we're used to seeing, and it kind of gives the viewer something to chew on, something to think about. So I'm going to position it right there. And for this one, I could say that this is done. I want it to just be bold. I want it to be simple, right? I don't want to clutter the message. But I could also think about, again, moving the eye down the page. And I'm going to do that. So I'm going to get the ellipse tool, right? It's right under the rectangle tool. I could also hit L to get it. And I'm on my shapes layer. And I'm going to draw a circle. So I'm holding down shift because I don't want weird ovally things. I want circles. And I want these to contrast with the letters, but still be kind of really bright and bold. So I'm going to make these bright neon pink. And I'm going to find a shade that I like. I want it to have a little bit more red in it. All right, that's very pink. So I'm going to put that there, and then I'm going to copy and paste a couple more of these here. So I'm going to Apple C, Apple V. I get one. I can move it. Okay, so you see I accidentally moved my text because it's over my shapes layer. So I'm just going to lock it. Locking that layer says I can't select anything on it, and now it's much easier for me to work. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I don't want them all to be the same size. I'm going to tuck it right underneath that S, so the text layer is on top of shape, so anything in the text layer will cover that. Gives it kind of a nice 3D effect. So I'm pasting another one, making it smaller, not quite that small, and I'm trying to just bring the eye down the page. So I'm going to paste one more time, and come here. Maybe this one's a little bit bigger. Okay, so I like that. It gives it a little bit of three-dimensionality. It moves the eye down the page, creates some more visual interest. I could be done there, but I want to look at one last thing, and that is blend modes. So I'm going to go ahead and drag to select all of my circles because I can change, if I wanted to change the fill, I could change the fill of all of these at once. But what I'm going to do is come back to my transparency panel, and we changed opacity earlier, and we could do that again. We could fade these into the background, and I'm going to zoom in on one so we can really look at what happens when we change things. Okay, so that becomes transparent, the image is showing behind it, but we can also change the blend mode, and that is this drop down right here. And you might be familiar with this from Photoshop or other tools. What this does is it changes how that color interacts with what's behind it. Okay, so you see this is very different than just changing the opacity. I still get that bright pink, but the dark areas below it are multiplying through, are coming through. Okay, so I'm not going to go over what each of these does. They each do different effects. Some might have no effect at times. Some might make what you're doing disappear. So you can play with those and you'll start to get a feel for what they do. You can also do that to your text though. So if I wanted to have lost, I like it bold and kind of just dark. But if I change this to some of these other ones, like I said, sometimes it won't do anything, but other times you might get really interesting effects. So you can use these to start to create much more interesting compositions, to use color in more interesting ways, just giving you more things to play with. So once you are done, we're going to export these. And to do that, I'm going to come to File, Export, Export for Screens. And now I'm going to select which of these I want to export. So I worked on this one and this one. I'm going to choose where I want them to go. Okay, put them on my desktop. And I'm going to make sure, I've been doing some other work, just make sure that this, where it says formats, the scale is 1x for now, and the format is PNG. We'll talk about those at other times, but 1x just means save it at whatever size it's at. So I'm going to export those artboards, and that's what we're doing for today.